This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning. Trump puts pause on all U.S. military funding for Ukraine. And Sagar Meghani has the impacts and reaction.
Stocks fall sharply after President Trump announces large tariffs against Mexico and Canada will go into effect today. I'm John Stolnis in Washington.
President Trump to address the nation and Congress.
This is going to be a big night. President Trump always steps up on game night.
I'm Clayton Neville.
The Treasury Department is ending the enforcement of a Biden-era business ownership information database. Jennifer King, Washington.
Investors trying to navigate what's coming out of the White House after yesterday's tariff-induced stock plunge. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
Not the best day to fly with a power outage in Baltimore and a scorpion sting in Boston. I'm Jeff McKay.
All ahead on America in the Morning. The Trump administration is pausing all aid to Ukraine, which includes weapons already in transit to Kyiv. The pause comes following last week's contentious meeting between President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelinsky. Washington correspondent Sagar Meghani reports on the growing rift between Washington and Kyiv and what led to the divide.
We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war,
you're not in a good position.
You
don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having
cards.
Playing cards. Right now, you don't. Yeah, you're playing cards.
Mr. President.
You're playing cards.
Serious.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III.
President Trump is ripping his Ukrainian counterpart for suggesting the end of Russia's war against his nation is likely far off.
Volodymyr
Zelensky says the end is still very, very far away. On social media, President Trump slammed that as the worst thing Zelensky could have said. And hours later at the White House,
everybody has to get into a room, so to speak, and we have to make a deal. And the deal can be made very fast. It should not be that hard a deal to make. It could be made very fast. He better not be right about that.
Oh, I think he's quite right.
The Brookings Institution's Angela Stent, a former U.S. intelligence officer for Russia who has written a book about Vladimir Putin, says the Russian leader has no interest in negotiating a deal to stop the fighting right now, and first wants to watch U.S.-European relations implode.
And it will be much easier then for Russia to win this war on its own terms.
But the president's focused on Zelensky, saying if someone doesn't want to make a deal,
the deal can be made very fast. It should not be that hard a deal to make. It can be made very fast. Now, maybe somebody doesn't want to make a deal. And if somebody doesn't want to make a deal, I think that person won't be around very long. That person will not be listened to very long.
Sagar Meghani, Washington.
1 month after temporarily freezing tariffs against Mexico and Canada, President Trump announced those tariffs will go into effect starting today. John Stolnis has the story from Washington.
A late-day sell-off on Wall Street saw the Dow Industrial Average plunge nearly 650 points, a sell-off that coincided with the president's White House remarks on the imposition of 25% tariffs against Mexican and Canadian goods.
It's going to be very costly for people to take advantage of this country. They can't come in and steal our money and steal our jobs and take our factories and take our businesses and expect not to be punished, and they're being punished by tariffs.
President Trump proclaiming there was no room left for negotiations that could keep the tariffs from going into place.
The United States has been taken advantage of for 40 years. The United States has been a laughingstock for years and years. That's why this gentleman is built in Taiwan instead of building here. It would have been better if he built here. If we had a president that knew what they were doing, and we had a lot of them very bad on trade.
Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly says they had hoped the president would alter course.
If Trump is imposing tariffs, we're ready. We are ready with $155 billion worth of tariffs, and we're ready with the first tranche of tariffs, which is $30 billion, which is already known.
One motivation for the tariffs, Trump wants both nations to do more to stop the flow of fentanyl into the U.S.
Vast amounts of fentanyl have poured into our country from Mexico, and as you know, also from China, where it goes to Mexico and goes to Canada.
Issam Kusan owns a grocery store in Michigan that's 10 miles from the border. He says he's the one taking on the financial cost of the tariffs.
For example, I was buying a load of lentil from Canada, and they told me, we will honor our prices, but you are responsible to pay the tariff.
And this Michigan shopper says he's concerned prices for everything will go even higher.
It definitely increases the anxiety that a lot of, average shoppers and Americans are feeling.
Trump also announced another 10% tariff on goods from China on top of the 10% he put in place last month. John Stolnis, Washington.
A preview of Trump's address to Congress when America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. Spring-like thunderstorms are in the forecast today. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
A classic major March storm is going to continue to build into the Plains states today. The severe thunderstorms that formed last evening will continue eastward into the early morning and then will continue to build into northeast Texas, as well as southern Missouri and Illinois, and then continuing into Mississippi this afternoon. There is a possibility of damaging winds, hail, and tornadoes with these storms. Farther north, the rain will fall from eastern Nebraska through Wisconsin and the rest of Missouri, and also continuing through Illinois into Michigan. Some of these areas could have localized flooding with the heavier rainfall. And rain and thunderstorms will continue to build eastward tonight, with severe weather still possible in Alabama into Tennessee and Georgia. And finally, on the far western side of the storm, colder air will be working into the system, with moderate to heavy snow developing from western Nebraska into the Dakotas and then northern Minnesota. That colder air will incredibly continue to build southward, with rain changing to snow as far south as eastern Kansas and Missouri tonight. Snowfall in some of the areas will top 6 inches by Wednesday morning. There will also be some lingering snow showers through the rest of the Intermountain region, from Montana into Idaho and then southward through Colorado and Utah, as well as northern Arizona and New Mexico. Meanwhile, we have another system moving into the northwest, though it will have far less impacts with it, with just mainly rain along the coast and some snow over the Cascades. The rest of the west coast will be largely dry with some sunshine. That's the weather across America. It's going to be a mild day in Roanoke, Virginia, with clouds and some sun and a high of 59. Aberdeen, South Dakota is going to be cloudy and windy with a little snow, and we'll have an early high of 38 before turning colder. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Remember, you can follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. President Trump will address a joint session of Congress tonight. Correspondent Clayton Neville has a preview.
Tonight's speech by President Trump is not technically a State of the Union address, but that's really just a technicality. Since he's only been in office for 2 months, it's an address to a joint session of Congress. An official State of the Union will come later in his second term.
But what comes next is so critical.
Trump advisor Jason Miller previewed tonight's address with Fox News.
The country is in a really bad place from where Joe Biden left it, even with all the fantastic accomplishments that, by the way, I think George Washington and all the rest of the presidents would envy, is what President Trump does to finish getting our country back on track. This is going to be a big night. President Trump always steps up on game night on the big stage.
The president's speech is themed Renewal of the American Dream. It reportedly will feature 4 parts: accomplishments from Trump's second term so far, what the Trump administration has done for the economy, the president's renewed push for Congress to pass more money for border security, and the president's plan for world peace. I'm Clayton Neville.
The Trump administration is moving to scrap the government's Beneficial Ownership Information Database, or BOI, which was purportedly intended to fight financial crimes. Correspondent Jennifer King explains.
The Treasury Department is ending the enforcement of a Biden-era business ownership information database. It was meant to curb money laundering and stop the formation of anonymous shell companies. The rule required most American businesses with fewer than 20 employees to register their owners with the government. Small businesses challenging the requirement had been unable to win in court. The Treasury announced it will not impose penalties now or in the future. The move was lauded by President Trump, who called the reporting requirement outrageous and invasive. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent president called the changes a victory for common sense, saying it was part of the Trump agenda to rein in burdensome regulations. Former Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said the regulation would have helped law enforcement officials track down money launderers and criminals. Jennifer King, Washington.
The impacts of tariffs on automakers and lumber. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. You're with America in the Morning. The Business Report is brought to you by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments has a team of specialists in investing, financial planning, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Back with Tuesday Business, CNBC's Jessica Ettinger.
Wall Street opens this morning after an ugly start to March. For stocks yesterday, the S&P 500 index plunged almost 2%. The NASDAQ dropped 2.5%. As of yesterday's close, President Trump said tariffs will begin on goods coming in from Canada and Mexico, but he had only signed a tariff increase for Chinese goods, taking that up to 20% at that moment.
People have surrendered and they feel like there's no obvious place to hide. The market is still only down 5% from a record high. It's about flat year to date. It's been a pretty good reset.
CNBC's Mike Santoli. Bitcoin also collapsed yesterday, 9%. As it's been moving with the markets. Some investors say it's been intense policy noise coming from the White House, and it's hurting confidence.
I think he's doing things in a manner that is very destabilizing, and he's trying to change the whole ethos of the country. You know, I look at the Statue of Liberty, I think the message at the base is give me your poor masses the yearning to be free, you know, and we're rejecting that now, and we're taking a different approach. I understand what he's doing. He's focusing on the deficit, but which has to be focused. But focusing on the deficit is contractionary.
That's billionaire investor Leon Cooperman on CNBC. Car makers are bracing for the Trump tariffs no matter when or how they happen.
Almost 1 out of every 4 comes from either north or south of the border. Mexico, about double the production of Canada. What have the big 3 done in preparation? I know they all have war rooms. I've talked to people at all of the automakers who have said, look, we're game planning for a number of scenarios. Most believe you're looking at 3, 4, 5 weeks before you really start to see prices rising. And most believe the automakers will spread it out across the lineup.
CNBC's Phil LeBeau. Canada supplies the U.S. with lumber used by home builders. Tariffs could mean new homes will cost even more.
The majority of lumber imports to the U.S. come from Canada, and there is already a 14.5% dumping tax on Canadian lumber. The 25% tariff would be on top of that. Appliances come from China and Mexico. You're seeing aluminum and gypsum. That's all your wallboard. That comes from Mexico as well. So if you see tariffs on that, you're looking at increased costs for builders, and they're going to trickle that down to buyers, of course.
CNBC's Diana Olick. Struggling Starbucks, as of today, has 13 fewer drinks on its menu, including 9 types of frappuccinos. The new CEO is trying to streamline work and increase speed behind the counter. American Airlines starting to test free Wi-Fi under pressure from some of its flyers who get it free on other airlines. On today's watch list, we get earnings from Best Buy, Target, and discounter Ross stores.
CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. The final day of Mardi Gras. A look at Fat Tuesday when America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. There were some unusual moments at 2 major East Coast airports. America in the Morning's Jeff McKay has details of a 4-hour power outage and a stinging scorpion.
Thousands of travelers were brought to a standstill Monday morning after a massive power outage caused major delays at Baltimore-Washington International Airport. In all, about 150 flights were delayed and 50 other flights were canceled, according to the flight tracking website FlightAware. A number of flights that were supposed to arrive in Baltimore were diverted to other airports. After about 4 hours, power was restored, but not before long security and check-in lines formed. In Boston, a woman was hospitalized after authorities say she was stung by a scorpion at Logan International Airport. The 40-year-old woman was stung while retrieving her luggage in the baggage claim area of Customs in Terminal E, according to the Massachusetts State Police. Scorpions are commonly thought of as desert dwellers. They also live in the Brazilian forest, British Columbia, as well as North Carolina. It's unclear how this scorpion wound up at Boston's airport. I'm Jeff McKay.
Today is Fat Tuesday, the final day of Mardi Gras. But unlike other years, severe weather in New Orleans is forcing some parades to either start early, change their routes, or be canceled altogether. Covering the festivities, correspondent Lisa Dwyer.
Powerful storms with a threat of tornadoes are expected to punch through Louisiana and other parts of the South, just as huge parades and costume revelers are set to celebrate Mardi Gras. The alarming forecast will be one of the first big tests for the National Weather Service after hundreds of its forecasters who make crucial local forecasts across the United States were fired last week. Twisters, damaging winds, and large hail are all possible as a strong storm system moves across the nation's midsection with the bullseye zone stretching from East Texas to Alabama. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
America in the Morning for Tuesday, March 4th, 2025 is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour,
President Trump says tariffs on America's two biggest trading partners will kick in. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
Mexico is making its case to avoid U.S. tariffs. I'm Haya Panjwani.
The mayor of Boston gets backlash. I'm Clayton Neville.
The illegal prison guard strike in New York State has ended, but some are refusing to go back to work. I'm Sue Aller.
Eric Adams now facing a major challenge for his job by fellow Democrat Andrew Cuomo. Julie Walker, New York.
White House announces $100 billion investment in new chips. I'm tech correspondent Chuck Palm.
Hollywood awarded its best this weekend, but what about the worst? I'm Kevin Carr.
Back after these messages. This is America in the Morning. March rolling in like a lion. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Once the month of March arrived, we entered meteorological spring, which is a little earlier than the recognized date later this month. The storm in the plains is a classic setup for an early March storm with severe weather on the southern side, heavy rain just to the north of the low pressure center, and then snow on the far northern western side of the system. The severe thunderstorms that formed this last evening will continue eastward into the early morning hours here, and then continue through northeast Texas into southern Missouri and Illinois, and then continuing into Mississippi this afternoon. There is a possibility of damaging winds, hail, and even tornadoes with these storms. Farther to the north, the rain will fall from eastern Nebraska through Wisconsin into the rest of Missouri, and then also continuing through Illinois into Michigan. Some areas could have some localized flooding with the heavier rainfall. Rain and thunderstorms will also continue to build eastward tonight, with severe thunderstorms still possible in Alabama into Tennessee and Georgia. And again, on the far western side of the storm, the colder air will be working into the system with moderate to heavy snow developing from western Nebraska into the Dakotas and northern Minnesota. That colder air will incredibly continue to build southward tonight, with rain changing to snow as far south as eastern Kansas and Missouri. Snow in some areas will reach 6 inches by Wednesday morning. There will still be some lingering snow showers through the rest of the Intermountain region from Montana and Idaho southward through Colorado and Utah, as well as northern Arizona and New Mexico. Meanwhile, another storm will be entering the northwest, though this will have far less concerns associated with it, with mainly rain along the coast and some snow over the Cascades. And the rest of the west coast will be largely dry with some sunshine. Highs will be mostly in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. President Trump is enacting 25% tariffs on imported goods from Mexico and Canada, despite concerns that the tariffs could start a trade war with two of America's largest trading partners. The news caused a dive on Wall Street Monday, and it's angering Canadians who've taken to boo America's national anthem. Washington correspondent Sagar Meghani reports some Canadian leaders are threatening retaliatory tariffs against American products and taking that a step further. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, addressing a Canadian mining conference, said energy should be part of his nation's tariff response.
I want to try to annihilate Ontario. I will do everything, including cut off their energy, with a smile on my face. And I'm encouraging every other province to do the same. They rely on our energy. They need to feel the pain. They want to come at us hard. We're going to come back twice as hard.
President Trump says tariffs on America's two biggest trading partners will kick in.
No room left for Mexico or for Canada. No, the tariffs, they're all set. They go into effect.
The president had put them off last month, but says there's no avoiding them now.
No room left. So what they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States, in which case they have no tariffs.
He says the plan is to force the two American neighbors to boost their fight against fentanyl trafficking and illegal immigration. But it's already sparked fears of a North American trade war with signs of higher inflation and slower growth.
If Trump is imposing tariffs, we're ready. We are ready with $155 billion worth of tariffs, and we're ready with the first tranche of tariffs.
Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly tells CTV her nation has prepared tariffs against U.S. goods.
We know that this is an existential threat to us. And there are thousands of jobs in Canada at stake. Now, we've done the work. We are ready should the U.S. decide to launch their trade war.
And before the president's announcement, Mexico's Claudia Sheinbaum said she also has a plan ready. Companies from Ford to Walmart have warned of the negative impact tariffs may have on their businesses. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
South of the border, Mexico has been more muted about tariffs than Canada, instead standing by and awaiting actions out of Washington and trying to make the case that they're following through on border commitments promised by President Trump. As correspondent Haya Panjwani reports, Mexican leadership is preparing for tariffs on goods entering the United States, but also plan to enact some of their own.
President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico says that her administration was waiting to see if Trump will go ahead with plans to impose a 25% tariff on Mexican imports. She says, on our part, we have been in communication with the U.S. government. We have made the necessary agreements and coordination, but the decision to impose tariffs depends on the United States government, on the United States president. So whatever his decision is, we will make our decisions, and there is a plan. Trump had threatened to impose tariffs in February before suspending them at the last minute when Mexico sent 10,000 National Guard troops to their shared border to crack down on drug trafficking and illegal immigration. Mexico believes it's made a strong case. The number of migrants arriving at the U.S. border is the lowest it's been in years. I'm Haya Panjwani.
Boston city leaders, including Mayor Michelle Wu, are receiving backlash for comments made after a knife-wielding man was killed by an off-duty police officer. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
Police in Boston say the suspect showed a knife near a Chick-fil-A on Boylston Street, a busy part of the city. He was shot and killed by a responding officer. That officer says the man was going after two people and trying to stab them. After the incident, city leaders gave a press conference.
Our thoughts and prayers are with the family and friends of the individual who's been lost.
Our condolences go to the individual who was killed tonight.
And Boston's Mayor Michelle Wu.
My condolences and all of our thoughts are with the family of the individual whose life has been lost, and I'm also thinking of all the people who were impacted.
The mayor being criticized for offering condolences to the knife-wielding man, some calling it bizarre. Social media comments accuse city leaders of caring more about protecting criminals than protecting residents. Others point out that the criticism from conservatives comes as Mayor Wu continues to implement sanctuary city policies. She's slated to address Congress on those policies this week. I'm Clayton Neville.
In Massachusetts, the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office is leading the investigation into both the suspect, identified as a 32-year-old man from a Boston suburb, and the off-duty officer who stopped the armed assailant. Mayor Wu later defended herself and also praised police, saying, quote, "I'm grateful every hour of every day for the work of our Boston police officers. In this case, we had an off-duty officer who saw something happening. His training kicked in. He took action and securely saved lives," end quote. 17 till. Prison guards on strike. When we return, America in the Morning, back after these messages. I'm John Trout. You're with America in the Morning. A Republican-led Senate bill to prevent boys from participating in girls' sports failed to overcome the legislative filibuster Monday night after it did not reach the necessary 60-vote threshold to advance. All Democrat senators voted against the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act, introduced by Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville, and had more than 40 GOP co-sponsors. The bill follows President Trump's executive order, which was called Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports. The bill and executive order come amid growing concerns about biological men and boys who identify as transgender participating in and winning in events and leagues for women and girls. America in the Morning continues. A wildcat strike by New York State prison guards stretches into a third week, prompting officials to start firing workers for failing to abide by a deal to end the illegal labor action. Sue Aller has more on the story.
Go back to work or risk getting fired. The recent strike by New York State prison guards began on February 17th, and despite a tentative agreement reached last Thursday, some guards are refusing to go back to work, mostly in the upstate and western New York region. The situation remains tense, with the state deploying the National Guard to some prisons to maintain order and operations. Under New York's Taylor law, which prohibits public workers from walking off the job, the strike was deemed illegal. Jackie Bray, New York State Homeland Security Commissioner, had this to say on CBS Channel 2 News.
And we estimate that if the strike were to continue, we'd be spending approximately $106 million a month.
The guards are concerned for their safety and are asking for better working conditions. The agreement did include a temporary bump in overtime pay and a 90-day suspension of certain provisions of the controversial HALT Act, which limits the use of solitary confinement. Corrections Commissioner Daniel Marticello told Channel 2 News that some workers have returned.
We've had staff return to duty, and we've resulted in reducing the number of facilities that are currently participating in the strike from 38 to 32.
Termination notices have been sent to those who have missed 11 consecutive shifts or more. In New York, I'm Sue Aller.
Also from the Empire State, more than 3 years ago, Andrew Cuomo resigned as New York's governor over sexual harassment complaints. Now he has his sights on becoming New York City's next mayor. As correspondent Julie Walker reports, that idea isn't sitting well with the city's current mayor.
I am a lifelong New Yorker, and I love New York. And I want New York to not only survive, but for New York to thrive. For my children and for yours. So now the only question is, are you ready to fight to save our city? I know that I am. Let's do it. Let's do it together.
Embattled New York City Mayor Eric Adams now facing a major challenge for his job by fellow Democrat and former Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Hello, I'm Andrew Cuomo.
Adams was asked about Cuomo's statement that the city needs saving.
Yes, I do believe we need to be saved from him.
Adams was also asked about the sex assault allegations by 11 women against Cuomo, which he denies, or the COVID nursing home deaths under Cuomo disqualify him. Adams says that's for voters to decide.
Should that be an automatic disqualification? No, I think it needs to be answered on the trail, exactly what happened.
Adams is still trying to get his own federal corruption charges dropped after the DOJ made the request so the mayor could assist with President Trump's immigration crackdown. Julie Walker, New York.
The Senate voted to confirm former pro wrestling executive Linda McMahon as the nation's education secretary, a role that places her atop a department that President Donald Trump has vowed to dismantle. The Senate voted to confirm McMahon 51-45. Through executive orders, the president has already targeted diversity programs and expanded school choice. Among McMahon's immediate tasks, continuing the Trump agenda to empower states to have more say in local education and cut the fat out of education spending. President Trump announces a $100 billion investment in new computer chips by the world's largest manufacturer, Taiwan Semiconductor. 5 new plants are to be built in Arizona. Here's Chuck Palm with that in today's Tech Report.
Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company announced a $100 billion investment in chip manufacturing facilities in the United States. President Trump had comments from the White House at an event marking the deal. This $100 billion new investment will go into building 5 cutting-edge fabrication facilities in the great state of Arizona. TSMC also received an award of $6.6 billion in grants from the CHIPS Act for the Arizona facilities. Trump also said it will create thousands of high-paying jobs for Arizonans. President Trump also had a surprise announcement in creating a crypto strategic reserve, mentioning some lesser-known cryptocurrencies like XRP, Solana, and Cardano, but focusing on Bitcoin and Ethereum, sending prices higher for a short time. But by late yesterday, crypto prices had basically returned to where they were before the announcement. Bitcoin trading around $86,000 and Ethereum at $21.43. For the latest in tech news, visit chuckpalm.com.
Tuesday Sports has arrived. Here's Robert Workman.
The Thunder got 51 points from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander last night to get by the Rockets 137-128 for their 50th win of the season.
Getting closer to the best version of ourselves towards the end of the season and into the playoffs. And that's when you want to be the best version of yourselves, and that's what we're focused on. The process more so than the outcome, I would say.
This was the 4th game where SGA has hit half 100 this year, all since January, and he's the leading scorer in the association. Pistons pounded the Jazz 134-106 for their 10th win in 11 games. Hawks winged the Grizzlies 132-130 on Karis LeVert's layup at the buzzer. Kings crowned the Mavericks, Warriors swatted the Hornets, Blazers burned the Sixers, and the Heat melted the Wizards. Auburn and Duke remain 1-2 at the top of the college basketball polls. The Tigers are unanimous #1 in the AP. The Blue Devils snagged 1 first-place vote from the coaches. Duke dunked Wake Forest last night to clinch at least a share of the ACC regular season crown, and #3 Houston held off Kansas, the Cougars' 9th straight win. Hockey, the Panthers deflected the Lightning 2-1, ending Tampa Bay's 8-game winning streak. Florida also announced that Matthew Tkachuk will sit out the rest of the regular season with a groin injury he suffered in the Four Nations face-off. The Panthers hope to get him back on the ice in the playoffs. That's Tuesday Sports.
Thank you, sir. When we return on America in the Morning, movies that really stink. The Razzies, after these messages. America in the Morning continues. Dolly Parton's little seen but often talked about husband has passed away. Carl Dean died in a Nashville hospital. He was 82. Dean and Dolly Parton met at a laundromat in Nashville and dated for 2 years before they wed. They were married for 60 years. He was rarely seen in public with the singing star. No cause of death was announced. He'll be laid to rest in a private ceremony for only his immediate family. More is being learned surrounding the circumstance of the death of Hollywood legend Gene Hackman and his wife at their New Mexico home. Correspondent Jennifer King has the latest.
A search warrant shows Oscar winner Gene Hackman, his wife, and one of their dogs had been dead for some time when a worker discovered their bodies at the couple's Santa Fe, New Mexico home.
There was a gentleman that was doing some pest control work that had gone to the Hackman residence, and he noticed that they weren't home, which was odd, I guess, as far as he was concerned. He made contact with a security officer that was there.
I think we just found one deceased person inside a house.
Santa Fe County Sheriff Adam Mendoza says they're not ruling anything out.
They have been deceased for quite a while. There was no obvious sign or indication of a foul play. There was no immediate sign of foul play. Haven't ruled that out yet. This is an investigation, so we're keeping everything on the table.
The sheriff's office says Hackman was found dead in an entryway, and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, was found in a bathroom next to a space heater with an open prescription bottle and pills scattered nearby.
I think the autopsy is going to tell us a lot, and any evidence that we collect.
The sheriff says the investigation is ongoing.
It's not normal to find 2 people deceased in a residence. That's concerning. And then there was also a dog that was in a kennel that was also found deceased.
Audio courtesy KOAT. I'm Jennifer King.
Following the Oscars, we now know the best films of 2024, but what about the not so good, the stinkers? Kevin Carr has a look at the Razzies.
You may have been so distracted by the Oscars that you didn't notice some other awards announced this weekend.
Welcome to the 45th Annual Razzie Awards Bizarro Edition.
The Golden Raspberry Awards at Razzies.com celebrate the worst in cinema, and the biggest winner, if you can use that term, was the Spider-Man adjacent Madam Web.
It's honestly like the least weird thing that's happened all day.
The film was dishonored for Worst Picture as well as Worst Screenplay and Worst Actress for Dakota Johnson.
Having given her film her own review, it's kind of like if AI created your boyfriend's favorite movie. We give her kudos for owning her bad.
Another comic book film, Joker Folie à Deux, which led the nominations with 7, was given Worst Sequel and Worst Screen Couple for Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga.
I'm in trouble.
Phoenix has now won both the Oscar and the Razzie for the same character, no less.
Oh, I can't do this anymore.
Other films winning multiple awards were Unfrosted, with Jerry Seinfeld as Worst Actor and Amy Schumer as Worst Supporting Actress.
Big red K that never stops glaring at me!
Francis Ford Coppola was named Worst Director for his fever dream Megalopolis.
Enjoy the show.
Coppola took to Instagram saying he was, quote, thrilled to accept the Razzie, and he, quote, chose to not follow the gutless rules laid down by an industry so terrified of risk. Finally, previous Razzie winner Pamela Anderson was honored with the Razzie Redeemer Award for her acclaimed performance in The Last Showgirl.
I have no regrets.
I'm Kevin Carr.
America in the Morning for Tuesday, March 4th, 2025 is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.